It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Violent clashes on university campuses on both coasts of the United States. Police move in to restrain rival protesters attacking each other.
We have seen substances, be it tear gas or pepper spray, dispensed here just in the past hour or so.
Tempers also flare in New York. 300 people are arrested over demonstrations about the war in Gaza.
There were those who were never concerned about free speech. They were concerned about chaos. It was about external actors hijacking peaceful protests and influence students to escalate.
Also tonight, the 14-year-old boy killed in a sword attack in northeast London is named as Daniel Angerin. A 36-year-old man is charged with murder. Sky News learns that compensation is to be extended to bereaved children of victims of the infected blood scandal. Plus, as millions prepare to cast their vote in tomorrow's local elections, the Labour leader sets his sights on winning in Tory strongholds like Harlow in Essex. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence at universities across the United States over demonstrations about the Israel-Hamas war. Students on campuses on both coasts of America have clashed with each other and the police. Officials at the University of California in Los Angeles declared a pro-Palestinian encampment illegal and warned protesters that they faced consequences if they did not leave. And in New York, riot police were called in to calm a major incident at Columbia University. Well, the pro-Palestinian protests began at Columbia in mid-April, and police cracked down again last night, sending riot police into an occupied building. Since the movement began, more than 1,000 people have been arrested across 33 campuses. The protests appear to still be intensifying across the country, with pro-Palestinian demonstrations held at a further 34. In a moment, we'll go live to our US correspondent, James Matthews, at Columbia University. But first to the University of California, Los Angeles, where Martha Kellner witnessed violent clashes between opposing protesters.
Fireworks, fury, and fear. These are the biggest protests at American universities for half a century. And this week, they've got much bigger and much more violent.
Where are the cops? Should we just put it down? Should we call 911?
Exactly, that's my best.
Where are the cops?
It was the question on everyone's lips. Brawls continuing for hours before any police turned up.
Water.
Attackers with makeshift weapons trying to break into a pro-Palestinian tent encampment. This protester pounced on by a large group.
Stop!
Students left bloodied and beaten. Tear gas and pepper spray were fired into the air. When the police did finally arrive, they tried to control the chaos. Piercing the noise was a quiet act of defiance. Police uncertain how to respond to this.
I can't quite believe what I'm seeing, but this line of California highway police officers who were marching through this area have been brought to a standstill by this young woman who, at intervals, sinks to her knees and begins to pray. They've clearly decided that they're not going to intervene, that they're going to allow her to continue with this prayer ritual.
A night watchman guarded the encampment as police pushed forward. From east to west, this is now a country divided.
You're wearing a mask. Why are you wearing a mask?
Why am I wearing a mask?
Yeah.
Because these people like to do crazy things, you know? They like to put your face everywhere, flip the news on you. Come on, you already know what this is.
You're a counter-protester.
They stood there for over an hour while students were getting assaulted right where we're standing here. And now they come here brandishing zip ties and these guns here.
You feel safe?
Not from these cops. They came here to intimidate us.
Students watch from the roof of the English department as history unfolds below. Whatever happens next, these protests, the politics and the policing will be remembered. Martha Kellner, Sky News, Los Angeles.
Well, in New York, there were more than 300 arrests, mainly at Columbia University, where some riot officers even climbed through windows to arrest students who'd occupied a building. The unrest prompted a statement from the mayor, who said he would not allow the protests to disrupt the city. James Matthews has more.
Ground zero for America's campus unrest. And the drums of protest were still beating at New York's Columbia University.
Hey, Chief. We had a bad night here. We had a bad night at City College. They had a bad night at UCLA.
This was university staff objecting to police, saying they'd patrol campus for the next fortnight. Some students were leaving early for the summer. The university they left behind looked deserted, a tented camp no more, after a hard lesson in public unrest and its policing.
I don't feel safer with a bunch of police on campus like this. I feel intimidated.
I don't know, I feel like they're being hypocrites when they tell us that we cannot express our right to free speech. We cannot voice that we think what they're doing is wrong.
The NYPD released this video without sound of their overnight operation. Police officers used a vehicle they call the Bear to elevate them to an upper window and inside Hamilton Hall, the academic building occupied by protesters. They removed barricades and demonstrators room by room.
Free speech is the cornerstone of our society. But as our major concern, we knew and we saw that there were those who were never concerned about free speech. They were concerned about chaos. It was about external actors hijacking peaceful protests and influence students to escalate.
This was the University of Wisconsin, where police removed a Gaza solidarity camp and made at least a dozen arrests. Back at Columbia, it was entry by ID only, following the sharp exits of the night before. The occupation of the university's Hamilton Hall took place 56 years to the day since the same building was taken over by anti-Vietnam War protesters. The traditions of student activism and free speech are issues now as they were then.
Shame on you!
Scenes here and elsewhere compound the difficulties for President Joe Biden. He's already been criticised for the lack of a steady, controlling hand on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Open revolt at university campuses like this one further expose America's angst at events in the Middle East and its interaction with them. And it further tests his leadership.
Well, to James then at Columbia, and the Mayor of New York, James, warning about external influences on these students. Is there evidence of a more sinister side to these protests?
I think the evidence will come in the names and addresses of the near 300 who were arrested last night, Anna. The Mayor certainly seems confident that there are indeed sinister influences at play, people choreographing events, people not associated with the university, but choreographing events to propel them towards disorder. And of course, we're talking about an incendiary subject matter, conflict around the Middle East. So it's already a delicate set of circumstances, and you can see his concern that external actors might prey on that to create unrest. It's difficult for the universities, of course, because they encourage student activism. Activism is why students are driven towards universities, freedom of thought. They're encouraged to challenge norms, to propel them beyond a passive acceptance of the world around them with freedom of expression. It's all rooted in freedom of expression with no limits. I think what we're learning now, though, is that there very much are limits on freedom of expression. And the question unanswered by Columbia and other seats of learning is, how do you have that free speech? How do you let people say what they want without that spilling over into hate, harassment and intimidation? The evidence would appear to be that what you need is a heavy police presence. That's what we've got here at Columbia. Locked gates, heavy police presence, students and staff only on campus. That's not satisfactory here for the university experience, nor is it satisfactory anywhere else.
James, in New York for us there. Thank you. His name was Daniel Anjorin. He was just 14 years old and he was simply making his way to school. He's been named as the first victim of a sword attack in Hainault in northeast London. Police have described the incident as truly horrific and are still piecing together how and why the attack unfolded. Tonight, a 36-year-old man has been charged with murder. Our home editor, Jason Farrell, reports.
Daniel Anjorin, 14 years old, killed with a sword on the streets of London. Daniel's family told Sky News he was loved, intelligent and hard-working. And for his life to be taken so quickly in the way that it was has left a gaping wound that no family should experience. The flag was lowered at the 14-year-old's school, Bancroft's in East London, where he was described as a gentle character and a true scholar. It happens to be the same school Grace O'Malley Kumar went to, the medical student who was stabbed to death in Nottingham last year. 4 people were left injured, including 2 police officers with severe stab wounds. Their boss commended their bravery.
They're just extraordinary. I find it humbling that they will run towards danger, but that's not a glib phrase. That's real. They're charging towards somebody with a sword. They're putting themselves at risk because they are so connected to the idea of it's their job to protect the public.
A 36-year-old man named as Marcus Aurelio Ordini Monzo from Newham has been charged with murder. The Spanish-Brazilian national is also charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of grievous bodily harm, aggravated burglary and possession of a bladed article. At the scene, streets were being searched by police, while residents came to terms with what happened.
Could have been one of my grandchildren.
Yeah.
And I've lived here 37 years. I don't want to live here anymore.
Hainault hasn't been safe for a long time.
It's true.
It wasn't long ago there was a shooting down the road that happened. It's something that happens all the time down here.
A lot of people that I know that I'm friends with are also friends with his family, his brothers, so it's just a shock.
Crime scenes are places where normal life stops in its tracks. The buses that were driving through yesterday morning are still here, wrapped in police tape. And the bustle of normal suburban life has been replaced by the silent work of police officers in blue forensic gloves. The Prime Minister and the King are amongst those who've sent sympathy to the family of a young boy whose life ended in an inexplicable act of violence. A 36-year-old man is in custody, arrested on suspicion of murder. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, in Sheffield today, a 17-year-old boy was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder after 3 people were injured at a school in the city. South Yorkshire Police were called to the Burley Academy just before 9 a.m. after reports of an incident involving a sharp object, and officers later said broken glass had been used. A child and 2 adults were treated at the scene. Sky News has learned that the bereaved children of the victims of the infected blood scandal will receive an interim compensation payment. Campaigners have long called for the families to be recognised, but the group has so far not been included in payouts. Our health correspondent Ashish Joshi has more.
When I was 14 years old, I lost my father to HIV co-infection with hepatitis C.
The infected blood scandal destroyed Tony's life. His father Barry and 2 uncles, Victor and David, all haemophiliacs, treated with contaminated blood products. Bereaved children like Tony were excluded from recent interim compensation, but that wrong has finally been put right.
Children have never been recognised, and from the meeting today I take it that children are going to be recognised. There will be kind of a skeleton scheme up and running when that's in place. He said around about the 20th or soon after, once the report comes out, that children should be able to register to put themselves forward for these schemes.
That's hugely significant.
Absolutely massive. It was quite an emotional moment to actually know that we are finally being recognised for the harm done to our parents.
The government is meeting members of the infected and affected community as it prepares for the publication of the long-awaited blood inquiry report. It will be damning.
At a very early stage, the clinicians and the civil servants and the ministers realised that something had gone badly wrong and that it should be put right. But there was a complete and utter reluctance and later a refusal to address that issue. And and every time the victims go back in time and think about what happened, they have to relive that tragedy.
Stu McLean was infected with potentially deadly hepatitis C as a schoolboy. At his meeting, he made one demand of the government: to not overshadow the day the victims of this scandal have been waiting for nearly 50 years.
We're nearly there. I did ask him, please give us our day on the 20th, not to make any announcement. That's our day, for the truth to come out and let the public hear the truth. But I think we're nearly there for justice.
The government says it has not announced payments for specific cohorts, but it appears some assurances are being made. The victims and still grieving families have heard promises made and not delivered before. This time, it has to be different. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
The threat of deportation to Rwanda seems to be doing little to stop the small boats. The number of people crossing the channel in the first 4 months of the year has hit a new record of more than 7,500. Today, the Home Office promoted a video of nationwide raids showing people bound for Rwanda being detained, designed to show the government is taking action. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons reports.
As the morning light rises, a flurry of action. French police have seen a group of migrants with a boat heading for the sea. The surveillance helicopter comes in low. A volley of tear gas is fired. Clouds of smoke rising from the beach. Police pierce the boat, rendering it useless. And the migrants run away. The police have won this battle. What's left behind is the tapestry of a migrant crossing. Life jackets, children's clothes, and the now worthless dinghy. So what we've seen here is the French police foiling an attempt to get dozens of migrants from this beach over to Britain. Success for them, but I think an indication that the flow of humanity across the channel is showing no signs of slowing. So far, this has been a record year for migrants who've arrived on small boats and for those who have died trying. At the weekend, celebration and relief in the middle of the channel. These people had just entered British waters and they'd seen a border force vessel coming to rescue them. Among the passengers here was Haven, an 18-year-old from Kurdistan with a story of survival. She's now in the UK.
I'm really happy that I've arrived. It's a good country and it's safe. But I don't know, somehow I'm still surprised that the journey has ended.
And Haven, the British government now has a law that it can send people to Rwanda when they arrive on a boat like you. Are you worried that you will be sent to Rwanda?
I hope it doesn't happen. I'm not happy that they've passed a law that could send us to Rwanda. I really hope it doesn't happen to me.
Haven had survived this tragic crossing last week. Her dinghy was hijacked, overcrowded, and as a result, 5 people died. British police have now made several arrests in connection with this incident. The Home Office has now started detaining people ahead of deporting them to Rwanda. One person has already gone voluntarily. The government insists its new law will be a deterrent. But there are still so many who dream of a new life in Britain, whatever the risks. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Calais.
To the Middle East now, where America's top diplomat Antony Blinken has told Israel the time is now for a ceasefire with Hamas. The US Secretary of State has held talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Meanwhile, the first aid trucks have entered Gaza through a reopened crossing from Israel. The Unrest crossing on the northern edge of Gaza was primarily used for people crossing the border on foot. Sky's chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey was there to witness the loading of trucks taking aid into the territory.
Once considered impregnable, the battered watchtowers, damaged buildings and the workers repairing the Erez crossing between Israel and Gaza, a testament to the fact that Hamas overran this place on October the 7th last year, something most people considered impossible. This is the first time we've been allowed here since that day, a day that signalled Israel's previously presumed unassailable security system had in fact completely failed. Israelis haven't got over it. Now, though, past new security fences and through old security walls, aid trucks from Jordan are being allowed to cross into Gaza. This is the first time it's happened through Erez. And it's happened because of international pressure led by the United States for Israel to do more. The humanitarian cargo is unloaded in this part of Gaza and will be collected by aid agencies in their own trucks and taken further into northern Gaza, where it's desperately needed. The coordination of the movement of the aid inside is the most dangerous bit for the agencies. Last month, 7 workers from the World Central Kitchen NGO were killed, despite their mission being coordinated with the Israeli Defense Forces. Israeli soldiers guarding the aid drop-off point stare out at the ruins of Gaza. The Erez crossing has divided these peoples. Now it's a lifeline demanded by the international community.
One mustn't underestimate the significance of the Erez crossing being taken by Hamas on October the 7th. I've crossed through here many, many times. I would have considered it impossible. It seemed like an impregnable fortress. Well, the wall has been opened up now by the Israeli government to let aid come through. And the simple reason for that is the amount of international pressure that's growing upon the Israelis to allow more aid to get into Gaza.
Thank you, Blinken. Thank you, Blinken. United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken, on his 7th visit to the region, had an impromptu meeting with families of hostages still in Gaza. He's come to urge an agreement on a ceasefire in Gaza and ensure the delivery of aid to the Strip dramatically increases.
The progress is real, but given the need, given the immense need in Gaza, it needs to be accelerated, it needs to be sustained.
Children crowd around the site of one of the latest deadly airstrikes on the city of Rafah. With all the talk of a ground offensive, it's easy to forget that the city is bombed virtually every day, killing many. Such is the fear that Israel is about to attack that some are leaving. This is Khan Yunis, destroyed in this war. It says all you need to know about fear, that people are prepared to live here, in the midst of this rubble, rather than risk being in Rafah when the Israeli army attacks. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Israel.
Protesters have taken to the streets of Tbilisi once again tonight after Georgia's parliament moved a step closer to passing a law that critics fear will stifle media freedom and endanger the country's European Union membership bid. Georgian police seen again using water cannon, tear gas and pepper spray against the tens of thousands of protesters who've gathered in surrounding streets. And the leader of the main opposition party in Georgia spoke in the country's parliament today with his swollen face in bandages. Levin Habashvili said he was assaulted by police during a demonstration yesterday. Now, all political parties are keen to push their core messages ahead of tomorrow's local elections. The Conservatives pressing the point that deportations to Rwanda are underway and Labour focusing on their economic credentials. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has been speaking to Sir Keir Starmer, campaigning in Harlow in Essex.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Less than 24 hours to go before the final big ballot box test ahead of a general election.
Are you looking forward to Harlow?
That's good.
And Labour leader Keir Starmer is out for the final push, heading to Harlow in Essex, a council he could take from the Tories.
It's a bellwether seat. It was home to Thatcher's Essex man. Blair won Harlow in '97. How symbolic is it for you to win that, to feel like you're on course for that majority in the election?
I'm always looking at the underlying data to see whether we're making progress in the constituencies we need to win. And we do need to win in places like Harlow.
And that national data from these local polls, all important. Can Labour's 20-point poll lead translate into a convincing majority in a general election? Here at Harlow Football Club for a final pitch to voters.
The country is crying out for change. People know that things are so broken now. They want change.
Change, his buzzword, the national message unmistakable.
Do you think we can do it? Yeah!
But expectations are riding sky high, and Starmer knows it. Expectations are soaring for you and for Labour. What do you have to win to come out on Sunday feeling like these local elections have been a success for Labour?
We have to show progress. There's no doubt about that. We're a changed Labour Party. We have to show that people have the confidence and the trust to vote for this changed Labour Party. So we do need to show that progress.
Our psephologists would say you have to gain 350 plus council seats. Is that a baseline for you?
You put a number to me, and I understand why, because we do have to show that we're making that progress.
What's real progress, though? Hundreds of seats?
Well, I haven't put a number on it, but I do want to be showing the progress that a changed Labour Party can make.
I just want to take you back. This time, 3 years ago, Johnson won Hartlepool. You lost councils, hundreds of councillors. Does it give you shivers recalling it? Was it the low point of your leadership?
Oh, yes, it was the low point. And it really hit me because my job was to turn around the Labour Party and take us from defeat to success, and losing hurt.
Did you thought about quitting that day?
I did, because I didn't feel that I should be bigger than the party, and that if I couldn't bring about the change, then perhaps there should be a change. But actually, in the end, I reflected on it, talked to very many people, and doubled down and determined, no, it's the change in the Labour Party we need. And I do feel vindicated, because we are now a changed party. Nobody argues with that.
Labour clearly optimistic, but in the council ward of Bush Fair, the polls are still tight, and trust in politics, perhaps the biggest loser in recent years.
Everyone promises you everything, and then until it comes, and then nothing gets done. So they want you to vote for them, you all go and vote, and then literally nothing.
Do you trust politicians?
Some, not the current ones that are running the country.
OK. Do you like Keir Starmer?
Not particularly, but unfortunately, I despise the Tories more.
This is a chance for us to turn a page and turn our backs on decline.
Getting over the line in a general election is still a huge task for Labour. Starmer says this will be the change election. Soon we might have a better idea if he's right.
Well, Beth joins us now in Downing Street. So, Beth, what's at stake here?
Well, Anna, this is such a significant set of elections. It's the biggest test at the ballot box before a general election. 28 million electors across the country will have a vote, be that on local councillors, mayoral elections, the London Assembly, or police and crime commissioners. 107 councils up for grab, 10 metropolitan mayors, 2,600 council seats. Now, that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of the volume. Local elections, I should say, are not like a general election. People vote on local issues. Turnout's often lower. They might vote for someone in a local election that they don't vote for in a general election, but it's really significant because also in terms of the national picture, it's going to give us a sense of whether Keir Starmer is trailing Tony Blair and is on course for that big majority in the general election later this year that Tony Blair hit in '97. So we're looking at comparisons and trends. There's 20-point lead in the polls, according to our Sky News poll of polls. Does it bear out in these elections? Now, when I ask Keir Starmer about all of this today, he simply won't put a figure on it. But our psephologist, our election expert, Michael Thrasher, has. We're looking for 350 gains for Labour to be on track with what they were last year. But if he really wants Blair-type territory, he's looking for 400 seats or more. So much riding on the West Midlands mayor and Tees Valley mayoral races. West Mid too close to call. Both sides really nervous about that one. Tees Valley, can the Conservatives hold on? The other story in all of this is how bad will it be for the Prime Minister? Could it be so bad that there is a leadership challenge or a no confidence vote? That is all up in the air. But what is certain is that we will come out of these elections in a few days' time with a bigger sense of whether Keir Starmer really is on course to be your next Prime Minister. So it's really exciting.
Absolutely fascinating. Beth, plenty of coverage, obviously, from you and the team after polls closed. Thank you very much indeed. Well, meanwhile, speculation is growing about who will be the next leader of the Scottish National Party and First Minister. The SNP has survived a vote of no confidence in the Scottish Parliament, but the need for consensus has been brought into sharp focus again. The outgoing First Minister, Humza Yousaf, has been speaking to our Scotland correspondent, Conor Gillis.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
His time is almost up.
Ronnie, just tell us when we're good to go.
As attention turns to whether party members will get to decide who comes next.
There'll be a range of views. Some who believe that a contest is in the best interest, some who believe that it's not in the best interest. I certainly won't be interfering. I will make this one point though, Conor, which is an exceptionally important one. I was part of that leadership contest last time. I've got to reflect on my own role in that. It is of no good to the party nor the independence movement if any candidate or those close to them are talking the other candidate down.
There's been some suggestion that you were pushed out by those around you to let John Swinney come in and take over. What's your view on that? Is that true?
It's complete and utter rubbish, complete nonsense.
The SNP now faces its third leader in 18 months. Will Nicola Sturgeon back her close friend, John Swinney?
Look, no candidates have declared for the leadership yet, as far as I know, unless you're about to tell me otherwise. So I will wait to see who emerges, who the candidates are. And then, like all SNP members, I'll make up my own mind. I'm not going to try to tell other members how to vote. What I would say is that I hope the contest is positive. I hope it is forward-looking.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today. And
Kate Forbes pondering, pulling together policy ideas.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sky News understands Forbes and Swinney, the bookies' favourite, have met for secret talks.
Are you closer today though than you were yesterday?
Let's just give me the time and space to get to the parliamentary chamber and get on with what I've got to. Well, I think it's pretty obvious what I've got to think about. You know, I've got, as I've told you yesterday, I have to be very, very careful about my family circumstances.
Distracted, divided SNP government.
Meanwhile, an opposition plot to bring down the government in a confidence motion failed. But will the SNP's two frontrunners broker a deal in a bid to unite the party, facing fresh division? Conor Gillis, Sky News in Edinburgh.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, Kev Maguire, and the Deputy Comment Editor of the Telegraph, Annabel Denham. Welcome to both of you. And certainly among the stories, we will be discussing this on the front of the Telegraph. It's headlined, Ireland sending police to the border in a row over migration. That and plenty more, of course, when we come back. Well, hello there, watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages. Time then to see what's making the headlines with the associate editor of the Daily Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and the deputy comment editor of the Telegraph, Annabel Denham. Good to have you both with us. Good to see you. So to the front pages then, let us start with the Telegraph reporting on the row between Rishi Sunak and the Irish Prime Minister over sending police to the border to stop migrants entering Ireland. The Daily Mail claims Rwanda has become a reality. Now the first migrants earmarked for removal to the African nation have been detained. But the Eye reports the Rwanda plan could be delayed further as civil servants sue the government. Labour has said it would admit small boat migrants into the asylum system if it wins the election, according to The Times. The Metro covers the death of 14-year-old Daniel Angerin, who died in a sword attack yesterday. The man charged with his murder is due in court. Labour is set to reveal a watered-down package of workers' rights in the coming weeks. The Financial Times is calling it a softening of radical policies ahead of the election. Labour faces criticism over a loophole in a plan to ban zero-hours contracts, is The Guardian's take on that story. The Sun has a story about footballer Trent Alexander-Arnold apparently dating Iris Law, the daughter of actor Jude Law. And a reminder, by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of those papers for yourself while you listen to our guests. So let's head straight to them and to Kevin and Annabel. Welcome to both of you. Why don't you kick off with the Daily Mail? Day that Rwanda became a reality. You know, Home Office video released to us showing people handcuffed and detained and whipped out the very people who are due to be sent to Rwanda.
Yeah, a kind of vile, grotesque video, I thought. If people hadn't put up any opposition, why are they being handcuffed and dragged out in that way, rather than led to a van? If Putin released a video like this, it would be condemned for mistreating people. And whatever happened to the police and civil servants, public bodies not getting involved in politics before elections? And there are elections tomorrow. Anyway, there's all that. But I'm not sure you can actually argue, as the Mail, a big supporter of Rwanda, that policy. The day that Rwanda became a reality, it's become grim for those who've been seized in this way. And of course, I think anyone else who was on that list is probably going to scarper now. They see that video, it could well backfire on the government. But it only becomes a reality, I think, Rwanda, when people are forcibly deported and it begins to stop the boats. I don't think you can say it's a reality like this. And of course, we saw government ministers were saying, oh, it's a reality over somebody of African origin volunteering for a free flight, £3,000 and 5 years board and lodgings in Kigali, trying to claim that was a reality. Well, but that voluntary scheme is totally different to the enforced scheme. So I don't think it's a reality, but I think it's taken a very nasty turn with that footage.
Yes, and it was certainly The Times earlier this week who suggested that some of these migrants bound for Rwanda had already scarpered,
60%.
To use Kevin's phraseology. You know, is this, does this mean they will now disappear into the ether? Can they be tracked down if they're meant to be boarding a flight in 9 to 11 weeks, I think the Mail puts it now?
Well, look, there are around 5,700 migrants who've been earmarked for deportation to Rwanda, over half of which are believed to be missing, although the Home Office wouldn't use that term, but they do appear to have lost track of them. And what incentive will there be after these dramatic raids for migrants to come forward to be deported when they've made a very perilous journey to the UK to be here? What I find extraordinary is not just that this wasn't appropriate, but it also wasn't necessary from a political standpoint. I think it's become clear over the last few days that Rwanda is actually working better than probably anybody in the Conservative Party could possibly have hoped, because you've had this row with Ireland, because the Rwanda bill managed to get over the line, because it was a voluntary flight over to Kigali.
Commercial airline.
Commercial airline with some perks that you've pointed out. But nonetheless, that there was a sense that there was some momentum with the Conservative Party, and there have been rumours that other European nations, which are themselves grappling with migrant crises of their own, are looking at Rwanda and wondering if they could mirror it with a similar policy in their own countries. So, as I say, I think that there was some momentum with the Tories that's been in some ways ruined, dampened by these raids.
Well, we'll come on to the Ireland border row, which is in the lead for your paper in a moment. But first of all, to the eye, Kevin, and the fact that actually the Civil Servants Union has decided to sue the government about this. We always knew there were likely to be more court action. Did we think they'd come from senior civil servants?
This is the First Division Association. We generally call them mandarins, the senior people who effectively get the political orders and then give the orders to the other civil servants to enact it. And it's on the grounds, the challenge is, would they be told to break the law, break international law, because civil servants have to follow the law, obey the law. But what happens if a government is judged to be breaking the law? Then are you breaking the law if I'm only following orders? And it's Dave Penman, the General Secretary of the FDA, says they could be breaking international law, so they're going to test this. Now, I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think civil servants should carry out orders, but if you're asked to break the law, then you shouldn't.
So record numbers have already started arriving in this country in the first 4 months of this year, 7,500. 60% you say are missing in action. And meantime, we've got this row with Ireland and the idea that they are sending police now to the border with Northern Ireland, a border that is supposed to be unpoliced, with pleas from Rishi Sunak not to enforce border controls at this critical juncture.
Well, Rishi Sunak has insisted that the UK had made commitments to avoid a hard border as part of the Good Friday Agreement. That was central to the Brexit negotiations. It was something that Leo Varadkar pushed for very hard. He was commended by the European Union for the progress that he made there. And the sense from Downing Street is that Ireland cannot be cherry-picking, when it comes to important international agreements. It's been a really extraordinary row. 6 weeks ago, the Irish High Court barred the Irish government, from returning would-be migrants to Britain, precisely because they might be sent to Rwanda, which it did not regard as a safe country, and therefore it was putting those migrants in peril. The Ireland itself had supported the EU when it was reticent to take back Channel migrants from the UK. So the Irish government has found itself in a bind when it comes to this situation. And as I say, this row, which was sort of very strange and unexpected to begin with, is certainly intensifying and will do so much further if they do send police to the border between the north and south.
It's quite dizzying, really, the whole row. But of course, the UK Supreme Court ruled Rwanda was unsafe, but then the government decided to pass legislation just saying, oh, it is safe. Pass legislation saying, Annabelle, you're 22 feet tall. It wouldn't make you 22 feet tall, but nevertheless, they've done that. But you can't have a hard border now. Simon Harris, the Taoiseach, is saying, we're not going to have a hard border, we're just going to have a few coppers lurking around the border. But there is that no returns policy. But this 90% figure, which has got taken up, as the Telegraph says here, that 90% of migrants now entering Ireland are said to be coming from the UK, fleeing the UK, possibly Rwanda. There's no figure for it. And of course, the 90% now, as the Telegraph says, is an anecdotal figure that's just got used.
Well, I mean, the Irish did double down on that last night, I think, actually. But they've also...
they're doubling away from it now.
Doubling away from...
doubling away from it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And in Dublin, the tent city of 268 people living in this makeshift migrant camp have been taken into government state-managed sites, I think they called it as well. So they're trying to, lose them from the streets of Dublin as well. So we'll see what happens with this, certainly. Yes. But let's move on to a final story, if you don't mind, for this part, which is the enormous ructions we've seen. Oh, actually, no, changed it. Let me have a look. Sorry, Labour's workers' rights in the FT and The Guardian. What is Labour changing and why? Kevin?
Yeah, the New Deal for working people, I would say, is the jewel in Labour's crown, the offer. Annabelle, I've no doubt, will take a different position on it, but it was to increase quite significantly protection at work from day one, instead of having to wait two years to, for instance, qualify for employment protection against unfair dismissal, banning 0 hours contracts, outlawing fire and rehire on lower terms, rowing back on some of the Tory more recent anti-trade union laws, but not them all, not the majority. But according to the FT, and Labour disputes this, according to the FT, business people, lobbyists who've been speaking to Labour on behalf of business are saying Labour's rowing back now. This was Angela Rayner, it was her, she used to call her baby at times. Now, interestingly, she is weakened politically within Labour. As long as this police inquiry is ongoing, and as long as that controversy around her, she hasn't got the political might she had to defend her New Deal.
Interesting. Just very quickly, because it's the lead for The Guardian as well, just your thoughts on this in just a sentence, if you don't mind. I'm running late.
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult for Keir Starmer now, because it looks like he's come out with bold policies and then almost every single time has been forced to water them down, if not U-turn altogether. It's quite clear that this New Deal for workers is starting to collide with reality. Businesses have raised concerns over the impact that it'll have on hiring, particularly those entry level. And, to say that it's going to be revolutionary, the biggest increase in workers' rights for decades, well, that ignores that we've seen a massive increase in employment legislation over the last 14 years of Conservative government around things like flexible working, around increases in the minimum wage, holiday pay, maternity pay, all of these sorts of issues. We've seen increased rights for workers. And there are serious questions to be asked over whether they need to be entrenched.
In the gig economy.
You can't join in. That was a very long sentence. Sorry. I'm really over. Anyway, coming up next, we will talk more about the front pages, including the tributes paid to the 14-year-old boy fatally stabbed in North East London.
In the middle of the ocean, and if stuff goes wrong, we have to get ourselves out of it. Plastic was created as this amazing material that would last forever, and we've done that.
Every inch of this ocean has a plastic fragment.
The problem is totally different than what I expected.
I've never seen so much rubbish in the middle of nowhere.
You on shark watch?
We left from Hawaii and we sailed across the middle of the North Pacific Gyre, or what we know as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, to Vancouver, so 3,000 miles across the Pacific, doing scientific experiments along the way to really find out more about how much is in the ocean, what it's like, the fact that it breaks down into these small fragments that we call microplastics, and to really look at the chemistry of the plastic, the things adhering to it, to ultimately find out how we can solve it. It's all to do with the currents. So we have a huge, great big circulating current in each of our oceans. And in the centre, there's a calm patch. And so that's where all the plastic accumulates. So we had to sail straight on into those really strong winds to be able to get to the centre of the gyre. I think the biggest thing, we often expect to find an island of plastic. But the most surprising thing is that the wind and the waves and the sun break it down into fragments. So this is one of our samples here that we collected, and we actually found 507 pieces, which equates to over 500,000 in 1 square kilometre. The fact that it's this big, and now the estimates are looking at around 171 trillion pieces in our ocean, the idea of trying to go out there into this very challenging environment and clean it up just seems like the most enormous task, and that we really need to work at the source to stop it getting in there in the first place.
And so the documentary is coming out imminently, and you hope that the conclusion of it is eliminating single-use plastics at source?
Yeah, what the documentary really does is it takes people on this journey with us. It's quite an extraordinary place to visit. Not many people have been there. And so it allows you to really see firsthand, what we saw, what the true problem is of plastic.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview. With me once again, the Associate Editor of The Mirror, Kevin Maguire, and the Deputy Comment Editor of The Telegraph, Annabel Denham. Welcome back to both of you. A face of sadness on many a front page. The Metro, The Sun, The Times as well. The naming of this 14-year-old Annabel who was killed in this knife attack.
Yes, I mean, it's just such a tragic event and so random. You can't believe this young, sweet boy's bad luck, and what a horrible coincidence that he went to the same school as Grace O'Malley Kumar, who was murdered last year in that knife attack with Valdo Calacane in Nottingham, along with two others. So no, it's just an absolutely terrible story. You cannot imagine what his family must be going through, but very complimentary tributes paid to this boy who was at Bancroft School and had been described as a gentle child with a positive nature who was a true scholar. So, what a terrible loss.
Yes, Daniel Angerin, big football fan as well. We're
Arsenal.
told. Arsenal.
You just look, it's just a young lad. His life ahead of him, and as you say, lots of tributes, a great scholar. What a loss, and just the wrong place at the wrong time. And it's incredible, the grim coincidence. Two people from that school.
From the same private school.
Yeah.
And the question about what to do about it, and this idea of should more officers, have some tools at least to apprehend people, like tasers, for example, and whether or not the London Mayor would approve of that, which all feeds into electioneering as well, doesn't it?
I'm afraid it does. And Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, who has oversight of the Metropolitan Police, shares it with the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, is not committed himself to ensuring all police officers have tasers, but he hasn't said they shouldn't either. And Mark Rowley, the Commissioner, is looking into it. I thought they all had, actually, but it seems only a minority do. And it is a debate you have to have, because tasers were used. They're non-lethal, although there have been rare cases when they've killed. But they did halt the suspect with a sword.
Well, the other part of this, of course, are the two Metropolitan officers who sustained serious injuries. One woman came close to losing her hand. She had to have hours of surgery, this female officer. And, you have to question whether a baton or a truncheon is really a match for a sword or a machete, a long knife. So.
Annabel, Kevin, thank you both very much indeed. Plenty more, obviously, coming up in the 11. We'll also talk about the US campuses story as well then. Let's take a look at the weather and the thunderstorms to come. Certainly conditions will remain warm as we head towards the bank holiday weekend, but the weather will be unsettled. Thunderstorms likely in the short term, low pressure expected too for the weekend. Heavy rain with frequent thunder and lightning will spread northwestward overnight. A yellow thunderstorm warning remains in place until 8 a.m, with torrential downpours expected to create challenging driving conditions, possible disruption to rush hour travel. Mostly dry elsewhere, though, with low cloud mist and sea fog becoming widespread. Well, our press preview continues in Sky News at 11. We'll have the latest from the US with those violent clashes on university campuses.